It's good to be with you today, and today I'll be talking about self-advocacy and maybe at times straying over into systems advocacy. Um, and so I'm really glad that you're with me today, and I'm happy to join everyone for this conference. My name is Larry Wenger, and I currently am the executive director at the Dale McIntosh Center, and we're the independent living center that provides services down in Orange County, so Anaheim and Santa Ana and places like that. So it's good to be with everyone. Previously, a few years ago, I was up in Fresno, and so maybe some of you recognize me, and if I were actually there in person, I would recognize you. So it's good to be with you anyway. Today's presentation is one that I've done before. This is in a little bit of a different format. The presentation is called Speak Up, It's Your Life. And it's a presentation that focuses on the importance of self-advocacy and what that is and how you might do it and why it's so important to you as an individual. And so that's our topic today. So I like to think of this as a plan. So before I launch into the plan, let me talk a little bit about what advocacy is. So, you know, there's different definitions for advocacy, but to me, what advocacy means is finding your voice, learning how to use your voice, and using it in a way to achieve a goal or objective that you might have or that a group of people might have. And so you accomplish advocacy, or you do advocacy in a variety of ways, depending on what your goal is. And so we'll talk more about that. But advocacy is simply doing something or doing things to achieve a goal. So the place to start is to ask yourself, what is it that you want to do, right? So to get the process started, you have to know what it is you want to do. And so, for example, you might want to learn to ride the bus. You might want to get a job. You may be thinking about training or college or something more formal like that that's going to help you get a great job in the future. Might be to get a driver's license or graduate from high school, get a car, or get your own place to live, learn to cook, or in general to solve a problem, right? So the point here is that your goal could be any number of things. It could be several of the things I listed, especially if you're a younger person, right? So originally when I gave this presentation, it was for a group of youth, young people. But even as older folks, we may have goals around saving money, buying a house, renting a new apartment, or getting involved in a political issue, right? So it could be any number of things. But you've got to have a place to start. You've got to have a goal. You're not going to make progress if you don't set a goal for yourself. The next step in the process is to think about how you're going to achieve that goal. And the first thing I always like to do is find support, right? I don't want to go it alone. So I ask myself, who can help me on my path to success? Who can help me on the path toward achieving the goals I've set for myself? And so it's better said, who are supporters, or who do I know in my life that can help me? And some examples could be friends, mom and dad, or your guardian or your parents, maybe your grandparents, a teacher, a mentor, so somebody who supports you, that you talk to and get advice from. But whoever it is, these people can keep you on track, keep you accountable is the term we use. They can also offer suggestions and support. And a good support person or persons will be able to give you important information about issues connected to the goal that you have for yourself. So I think back, for example, to a time when I'd gotten a job and I was trying to take the bus to work, and they weren't making announcements for the stops, right? The ADA requires. So maybe you have a disability, maybe you don't hear, or maybe you can't read the street signs as you go by and have good orientation. Maybe another disability, maybe you just don't read. And those announcements help you greatly. And so the Americans with Disabilities Act requires that buses make those announcements. But years ago, they weren't always good at that. So working with, I had to find someone who could give me information about what is supposed to happen. What should I expect? What is required? And that helped me to fine tune my goal. So the person who supported me also provided me with a lot of important information. So that's an example. But it could be any of those people that I listed, or it could be somebody else. It's important to know when you will have reached your goal as well, right? So both in terms of setting a time frame up front, and then also we'll talk later about knowing when you've actually achieved your goal. Right? How will I know when I succeeded? How will I know when I have succeeded? Excuse me. But for now, we're more focused on the beginning of the process. I'm setting out, I've identified what it is I want to resolve or address. I've identified a person or a couple of people who can support me, keep me accountable, keep me on track, and who may be able to provide me with information that will help me be successful. And now I'm thinking about a kind of a time frame. So it might be 6 months from now, it might be a year from now. So I like to write down my goal in a way that says, this is my goal, and this is when I plan to reach it. So for example, I will learn to ride the bus on my own to and from work before December 31st of 2021. I want to move into my own place within 1 year, right? So those are examples of or I will get a job by July 1st of 2021, right? So you've set a milestone. You've set a time frame for when you expect to reach your goal, and it's a way of holding yourself accountable, and it's also a way of planning, right? So if I've set a goal that by December 31st of this year I want to have my own place, that's great. But now I've got to work on my plan. How is that going to happen? Right. And so I've got to be my own self-advocate and develop a plan for how that's going to happen. Because if I just sit back and say, well, on December 31st, it's going to happen, guess what? If you don't do something, it is not going to happen. Right. So if I expect to be able to ride the bus by July 1st, or if I expect to have a job by a certain time, that's great, but I've got to write down a plan for how I'm going to do it. And if I don't do it, nobody else is going to. Or if I let them do it for me, I am probably not going to get what I want out of that process. Because if other people are writing your plan and writing your goals, it may not represent what you're actually hoping to achieve. Right? So it's really important to set that time frame. But then this goes to the next point that I think of as tactics. Your plan, or how will you go about achieving your goal? So for example, let's just say my goal is to graduate high school, but I know that as I do that, I need accommodations. I'm going to need my teacher to support me, whatever it is. I may want to show up to the meeting where decisions about my accommodations and those types of things are made, and that's my IEP or my IPE. Right, so I better show up there. Or if I need help riding the bus, if my goal is to be able to take the bus to work by a certain date, well, great, but I better find out who can help me achieve that goal, where I can get training and assistance, and then I better pick up the phone or knock on their door and ask for assistance, right? Or if I want to get my own place, if a friend and I, or whatever, on my own or whatever that is, want to get our own place, I better go about a process of getting training if there's certain things I need help with. So for example, I might need help with managing money. And so I better get some help with, writing a budget and figuring out how much money I have and what I can afford, right? If I want to ride the bus, I better figure out where I can get that training. If I want a job, I better figure out where I can get that type of help so I achieve my goal by the date that I've set for myself. And it's really important to stress that as a person, as the person that this is about, so if these are my goals, I've got to own the process. I've got to be my own self-advocate. As I said earlier, if I let other people do that for me, it's not going to work. Or I may end up with something I didn't want or expect, right? So I always like to say, whatever your goal is, you need to be talking to the person or persons who can either make change for you or help you make the change you want to see. And so a key part of being an advocate is being able to identify who has the power to give me what I want or what I need. I mean, ultimately that's you. You've got to get involved in the process, but depending on what your goal is, there may be someone else out there who has the ability to make change or help you to change things to get what you need. So, for example, if I want to learn to ride the bus, I already talked about going and finding out where I can get that training and finding the person who can help me do that training, who can help me learn the route to work, right? Or learn the route to school. Or if I want to get a job, somebody who can teach me how to write a resume, or who does job placement and can help me find a job. Right? Those are some examples. Or if I'm trying to get the city to fix a curb cut or install a curb cut, or get a drinking fountain lowered at a business, or whatever it is, right? That I've got to think about the situation and think about that this is a real key piece of advocacy. Figure out who it is that can make the change that I want to see happen, right? So obviously it's you, but there's somebody else or an organization or a group of people out there who can also help you make that change. And one of the biggest pieces of this process is knowing when you've succeeded. So I will know I have succeeded when is the question, right? So you think about what it is you're working on and you ask yourself, how will I know when I've been successful? What will have changed? What will be different in my situation? What will be different in the world or in my city or in my home if I've been successful? Right? And so maybe the answer to that is I will be able to do what I wasn't able to do before, right? So maybe it's getting the announcements made on the bus so you know where you're at, or maybe it's getting a business to become more accessible, or whatever the case might be. There'll be something will be different. I'll be able to do something I wasn't able to do before, or that I wasn't able to do as well as I wanted to do, or something has changed, right? And so that's the key here to succeeding in this is know what will be different when this change has happened. So those are some very practical tips for advocacy. I can't stress enough the need to, whenever possible, to have others assist you in the process. There's power in numbers, right? So thinking about who else can help me to achieve change, not just thinking about who can support me or who can give me information, but who else might be part of my effort to achieve change, either for myself or in a system, right? So when we say system, that might be government, that might be getting legislation passed, it might be changing policies or procedures, right? So those are more systems things. But the key is that there is strength in numbers, and that as an advocate and when engaging in advocacy, it's really important to have not just supporters, but people actively engaged who are working with you and helping you to achieve the change you want to see. So, advocacy just in general, just in closing, just to say that advocacy is incredibly important. Many things have changed in the world because people cared enough to get involved and speak up and engage in the process. right? So if we just sit back and allow things to be what they will be and allow others to make decisions for us and allow whatever to happen, that's not going to work for us as people with disabilities or people from other minority groups or other communities, right? We have got to speak up for ourselves, and we've got to engage in the process and be a strong voice for change. And it's easy to do that when you have, or easier to do that, I should say, when you have supporters and people working alongside with you to make those changes happen. I've been part of groups that worked on a number of issues. I always talk about public transportation because that's one that I've been involved in often. And I can, just in speaking to that about getting more bus service or increasing accessibility, change with systems like that and around issues like that happens when people come together and work on an issue. And I also encourage thinking outside of your circle. I'm not a big, I don't know, I'm tired of that think outside the box catchphrase. So we'll say think outside your circle, right? So, if you're a person who has a disability, you might automatically think, well, I'll talk to other people with disabilities who are also using public transportation or care about the issue and would want change. That's great, but what about seniors who may not drive anymore and need access to good quality public transportation? What about organizations that are concerned about social justice, churches, faith community organizations, right? Humanitarian organizations, other nonprofits who might serve folks who are Latino or African American or other communities, Asian, other communities, who serve people who also may or may not have disabilities, but also use public transportation, right? So that's a good example of bringing other allies to the table who can work alongside you to achieve change. So that's kind of systems level change. And individually, there are likely other people out there facing some of the same challenges that you do. And so I always encourage finding other people who can work with you, and at very least finding a support system, right? Peers who have gone through those issues, who can provide you with valuable information and coaching and support as you go through it. So that's my presentation today. I'm always happy to talk to people about system change and individual advocacy as well. And I encourage you to connect to your local independent living center for support, either individually or with issues you're dealing with or on the systems level. And I'm always happy to, as I said, to answer questions and provide support. You can reach out to me at the Dale McIntosh Center, and I'm also happy to help. Thanks so much.